If you've ever heard my native language Hungarian, you'd probably know how difficult it will be to learn to speak English with correct grammar just by studying its grammar and translating word by word. That's why the thing that really helped me learn to speak English with impeccable grammar and communicate effectively was the fact that I wasn't studying grammar, I was learning it. And if you want to speak English fluently and wonder how to speak English fluently with correct grammar, but all you do is studying grammar rules, looking at exercises, so there's kind of a passive way of studying when it comes to grammar, this video will break down for you exactly what I did to get to where I am right now. You will never achieve fluency in English by simply memorizing and studying grammar rules and completing exercises without actually having an idea of how that grammar is used in real context. You will also find that this way of learning grammar, how your brain naturally learns to speak English with better grammar, is actually much less painful, much more enjoyable, and also more motivating as a result, because it's more communication-based and meaning-based compared to the boring rules and exercises in textbooks. Now, one thing to understand about why speaking English fluently is so challenging for many people and how to speak English fluently with correct grammar is the fact that it requires conditional knowledge, something I talk about in this video in detail, but it's not the kind of knowledge that we get to be introduced in school, which is mainly about explaining the rules and information, whereas conditional knowledge is more about how to apply that information when you are actually having an interaction with other people. Just like it's not enough to watch cars driving in a busy traffic jam to learn how to drive in a busy traffic jam, when you have to pay attention to the pedestrians crossing, the traffic lights, the signs, or the cyclists. And just like how you can't expect to dance well by watching other people dance, focusing on observing, getting used to how the grammar is used in real conversations, and then using grammar is going to be much more important. Now, this is the complete opposite of what we do in school, and what I still see on a lot of lives, on social media, on YouTube as well. There's a bunch of teachers explaining grammar rules but never actually help you practice those grammar rules in real conversations. And I understand the frustration that goes into understanding the complex structures in a different language. But if explanation was enough, if all the millions of YouTube videos and thousands of books that help you practice those grammar rules were enough, wouldn't everybody be speaking English with perfect grammar? Hey English learner, welcome or welcome back to my channel if you're a returning visitor. My name is Chubby, I'm an English fluency, learning and language anxiety coach, and this is a channel for serious English learners, ambitious professional adults who want to learn how to make vocabulary more memorable and how to speak English more freely, comfortably and confidently with the help of listening and spoken interaction. So these are topics that you're into and you'd like to find out more about. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so I can inundate you with all the content I've created so far that will help you improve your English fluency and help you feel more confident in your conversations. The key to understanding how to speak English fluently with correct grammar is something a lot of people miss. It's about how your brain is processing that grammar. So it stays there, you can always access whenever you speak. The mission of my business is always to help my students automatize language. So they get to a point where words automatically come out of their mouth. They don't have to think about what's the next word to use or worry about whether they make a mistake or not, because it's all automatic, just like in our first language. And in this video, I mentioned a few activities that we use to help them, that will also help you process that grammar so it stays here in the long term. It's like when you're learning to play a guitar. Have you ever done that? This is something I started to do, but then I quit during the pandemic because I really wanted to do something far away from screens because I was alone, stuck in Japan without anyone to visit. When you're learning to play a guitar or any other instrument, you learn about the chords and the different sounds, but that's not enough for you to actually become a really skilled guitar player, is it? But as you keep focusing on doing it the right way, you will eventually increase the number of times you get it right, which eventually helps you get better and better at it until you master it. Which is why the answer to how to speak English with correct grammar all starts with not just looking at and passively studying the grammar rules, but actually closely observing and really looking at how that grammar structure is used, what meaning it contributes to in real context. Now let's see a few examples.
As a smaller example, I used to be the type of person who would have internal freakouts with regards to test grades, how many likes I got on my most recent profile picture.
And I know this because I used to sell info products, and you know how big my brand was? That's why they used to say that the PC, the computer, was the LSD of the 90s.
Now you can see in all the three examples the expression used to, and you might already know how to use it. And this is key here. So many English students, including English teachers, spend way too much time with the rules, explaining the rules, not having enough examples for students to actually look at and see how that grammar is used, wasting too much time on how the grammar structures are called, whether it's third conditional or present perfect, when in fact, if you'd like to learn how to speak English fluently with correct grammar, all you need is to see how those rules are actually applied in real context, in conversations or in any text that you read or interview you listen to. And if you're looking for a more conversation-based, more motivating ways of learning grammar, you can always download my free 14-day learning plan that will give you activities every single day that will help you improve your fluency, your speaking, your listening, and your vocabulary as well. Find the first link in the description below. Now, if you look at these sentences again, what does used to mean? Even if you don't know what it means yet, or you're not exactly sure, the more times you see it used in other videos, podcasts, you read it in articles, you'll eventually understand better how to use it. Not because you know the rules, but because you see the rule applied in real conversations multiple times. Now, it might sound a bit shocking to hear this, but you don't need to fully understand the grammar after the first time or the second or the fifth time. Years of going to school kind of made us believe that when we don't understand something, that must mean we are stupid. So we all get frustrated when we feel out of control and we just can't make sense of what we see, which happens many times when we listen to English or when we see something written down and we just can't really understand what's going on. Just remember, learning a language is a process, and just because you don't understand one structure, maybe it's because you haven't seen that structure, that grammar or that vocabulary enough for you to really get the context and how exactly that's used. We don't have to freak out when we don't understand parts of what we are reading or we are listening to. I've recently talked about this in this video. And again, just because you don't fully understand grammar today, that doesn't mean you can't look at more examples of the same grammar tomorrow and then get eventually more used to it. What actually helps my students and the answer to how to speak English fluently with correct grammar is that at the beginning stages, when we are learning a new grammar structure, I always give them plenty of examples of how that grammar is used. We look at it in texts we read, in podcasts or interviews we listen to, videos where that grammar is used, so they get familiar with that grammar structure and feel more confident about understanding it. Here, we don't speak yet because we can't force ourselves to actually use a grammar structure that we haven't seen enough or we have no idea how exactly to use in what sort of context. Now, here's the second thing that gets a lot of people stuck, sometimes give up, and make them feel like learning English grammar is difficult. The power of reviewing and repetition. Reviewing over time in small amounts, whether it's vocabulary you're learning or grammar that you want to get better at, is going to be so much more helpful than studying the same thing for 3 hours or more. And this is what I always tell my students when we talk about learning grammar as a process. Think of learning grammar like moving to a new city, where you walk through the street the first time, you won't be able to remember what sort of shop is where. So you need to have walked through that same street and the different streets of the city multiple times for you to remember where to go if you want to buy a suit or if you want to grab a coffee. This is simply how your brain remembers something in the long term. Using grammar automatically, speaking English fluently with correct grammar requires long-term learning strategies and not memorization. You can look up Ebbinghaus and his research, some other research as well that people made on it. My video on some of the most effective ways your brain is remembering vocabulary and grammar. All of these basically recommend what we call the spacing effect by basically looking at a grammar structure on day one, really observing what's going on, and then doing the same thing for a short time the next day, and then skipping a day, looking at it again the next day, and then skipping 2 days, looking at the same grammar structure again, will eventually train your brain to remember that grammar structure, especially how that grammar structure is used over time. The way it works in our classes is that in the first class, when we study the new grammar, we just see a bunch of examples and do some really powerful exercises through reading, listening, that help my students see how the grammar is used. Then in the second class, we go back and look at a few more examples, sometimes in different contexts compared to what we saw in the first day, because this helps my students understand how the same grammar structure, like talking in the past, could be used in all sorts of different ways with different vocabulary. And in class, they get a few activities, they could work on it together. We know the power of social learning and learning together, and also activities that help them activate their vocabulary, make those connections deeper in their brains so they remember them longer. Here's my favorite activity we often use at the earlier stages of learning some new grammar, a matching exercise that really helps my students associate the meaning and how that grammar is used to something that they already know. Now let's see a few examples. Who works as a firefighter now? I used to worry about making mistakes when I speak English. And Barbara is often depressed. Now you can match these to something on the right. Could you guess what it could be? If you want, you can pause the video and I'll come back to you with the results. If you were observing what you were doing, you had to make a conscious effort and think about how used to is used in that sentence to make those connections with the sentence part. So the correct version would be, he works as a firefighter now, but he used to be a bartender. I used to worry about making mistakes when I speak English. Now I feel much more relaxed when I have conversations with my friends. Barbara is often depressed because he used to be made fun of for being overweight in school. As the classes progress, we always spend a good 20-30 minutes actually practicing getting better at using the grammar structures that we've previously seen and listened to and worked on. So when it comes to used to, for example, we could have a conversation about the habits you used to have in the past, but now you do something different. For example, I used to be really active in the morning, now I sleep until 10. This is what we practice, how to actually put sentences together, which is part of your fluency skill. We need to get better at putting our thoughts into words and then putting those words into comprehensible sentences to communicate with other people. And if my students make mistakes, if they hesitate, they need time to put these sentences together. It's like learning to strike that chord. It takes time and it's all part of learning. Now, these are the type of classes we call speaking boosters that help my students have a better quality of speaking, improve their grammar, and also integrate more vocabulary in their speaking instead of just randomly having conversations. I share a couple of activities and ideas in these two videos as well, so you can start applying these and improve your fluency with them. When most people speak, they just randomly start speaking and they expect to just be able to do anything and express anything without any sort of training in advance. It's like driving a car without actually understanding how to drive a car. There's gonna be a lot of accidents. If you start applying this strategy to the way you're learning grammar and start actually practicing putting sentences together with each of the grammar structures you find difficult to use, you're going to improve the quality of your speaking. And you basically get the core of how to speak English fluently with correct grammar. So you'll be able to avoid making too many mistakes because you have trained to say things with the correct grammar, and you will find it so much easier to improve your fluency. But of course, if this is something new to you and you'd like some more help and support with it, you can always leave your questions in the comment section below. And I'm also open to any sort of content ideas you want me to talk more about in a future video. Now, thanks a lot for staying till the end of this video. I appreciate you for your dedication and for your persistence, and wishing you an amazing rest of your day and rest of your week, and hope to see you in another video. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Chubby. If I can flood you. No, why is it always the intro that I should be already knowing verbatim about processing? Which is why the answer in a sentence that you're either listening to, watching. No, you can't watch a sentence. If you're looking for a simile, and if you're looking for, now it might sound a bit might sound